The applause was deafening. Bartholomew, my father, basking in the adoration, raised his glass to the assembled elite. To the Bellwether Foundation. May its legacy of philanthropy continue for generations. The champagne flutes chimed, a sickeningly sweet symphony to my ears. He looked so pleased, so utterly convinced of his triumph. Gwendolyn, my mother, beamed beside him, a portrait of societal perfection. Her pearl necklace, probably worth more than some small country's yearly GDP, gleamed under the chandelier light. They both looked so smug, a collective of their own making. Little did they know that legacy was about to crumble. Right there in the grand ballroom of the Bellwether Hotel, their curated world was about to be painted over with a truth they couldn't comprehend. Let them revel. Let them believe they had won, that they had successfully erased me, the stain on their pristine image. Because in a few minutes, when the projected image shifts from the Foundation logo to my latest piece, Gilded Cage, they will know for sure that I am the one holding all the cards. A single perfect teardrop. The kind that art critics go wild over. I took another sip of my sparkling water, ignoring the curious glances from passing waiters. One of them, a nervous young man with perpetually damp hands, almost spilled a tray of hors d'oeuvres as he caught my eye. He probably recognized me, or thought he did. Underneath my simple black dress, a vintage find from a second-hand shop, my heart thumped a steady rhythm, a counterpoint to the frantic energy crackling in the air. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. I let them celebrate because in moments their celebration would be my victory. My name is Sarah Bellwether, or rather it was. That name belonged to a girl carefully molded, relentlessly polished, and ultimately rejected. A porcelain doll with a trust fund. My parents, Gwendolyn and Bartholomew, were titans of industry, pillars of high society. Bartholomew, with his steel gray eyes and a handshake that could crush bones, controlled half the city's real estate. Gwendolyn, the queen bee of charity galas, could make or break a socialite's career with a single withering glance. Their lives were a meticulously crafted performance, every detail orchestrated to maintain their image. They expected a daughter who would seamlessly integrate into their world, a reflection of their success. A trophy to showcase at polo matches and debutante balls. They got me. From a young age, I saw the cracks beneath the veneer. The charity galas masking corporate greed, the polite smiles hiding ruthless ambition, the vapid conversations desperately avoiding any real emotion. It disgusted me. I remember overhearing my father on the phone negotiating some shady deal that would displace dozens of families, then turning around and donating a hefty sum to a homeless shelter. Hypocrisy wasn't just a flaw in their character, it was their operating system. While they arranged tea parties and etiquette lessons, I escaped to the streets, drawn to the raw, unfiltered humanity I found there. Old Mrs. Henderson, who sold flowers on the corner and always had a kind word, the street musicians pouring their hearts out for spare change, the graffiti artists transforming drab walls into vibrant expressions of life. I discovered art in the spray of a can in the vibrant chaos of a city alleyway. The brick walls became my canvas, a place to express the emotions I couldn't voice in the perfectly manicured gardens of my childhood home. The rage, the frustration, the injustice I saw all around me. My art became rebellion, a silent scream against the suffocating expectations. It was real and raw. Most importantly, it was mine. Kai was born in those alleyways, a phantom fueled by passion and a burning desire to expose the truth. Of course, my parents eventually found out. A society columnist, sniffing around for a scandalous story, caught wind of Kai, the mysterious street artist whose work was causing a stir. The connection to the Bellwether name was quickly made. The article, splashed across the front page of some rag, showed my tag, a stylized K, next to a mural depicting a fat cat in a top hat crushing a group of kneeling figures. The confrontation was as predictable as it was devastating. The scene played out in my father's study, a room filled with leather-bound books he'd never read and antique globes that symbolized his global dominance. This vandalism is a disgrace. Bartholomew bellowed, his face redder than the expensive Persian rug under his feet, waving a newspaper clipping in my face. Do you have any idea what this does to our reputation? Gwendolyn's voice was colder, sharper, laced with a disappointment that cut deeper than any anger. We sent you to the finest schools, Sarah. We gave you every opportunity. We even arranged for you to intern at that fancy art gallery downtown. And you repay us with this vulgarity. She gestured towards the newspaper as if it was a biohazard. They gave me an ultimatum: abandon my art, or be disowned. There was no hesitation. I choose my art, I stated, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. I knew what I was risking, but I also knew I couldn't live a lie. And they couldn't live with me embracing my real self. Gwendolyn's face twisted with fury. "You're not our daughter anymore," she shrieked, slamming the door in my face. That door slamming shut echoed the sound of my old life coming to an end. The finality of that sound, the reverberation through the cavernous house, confirmed everything I already knew. They valued image over family, status over love. Reeling but resolute, I vanished. I shed the skin of Sarah Bellwether and embraced Kai. I sold my designer clothes, packed a backpack with art supplies, and disappeared into the city's underbelly. I dove deeper into the art world, honing my skills, refining my message. I learned the city, memorized its back alleys and hidden corners. The homeless guys became my informers, the baristas in late-night cafes my confidants. I developed my style, bold, satirical, impossible to ignore. And I started planning. I knew deep down that one day I would make them see. Not just see my art, but see themselves for who they truly were. My secret weapon wasn't just my art. It was my intimate knowledge of their world, their hypocrisy, their vulnerabilities. I had spent my life observing them, dissecting their motives, learning their weaknesses. I knew, for example, that my father had a mistress, a young actress he kept hidden in a penthouse apartment downtown. I knew that my mother's charitable donations were often used as tax write-offs, with little actually going to the people they were supposed to help. They saw me as a disappointment, a naive child. They never realized I was studying them, preparing to dismantle their carefully constructed reality. I knew I had to prove them wrong. Show them what I was capable of. I wanted to make them understand that art was power. That truth holds greater value than family bloodlines. I wanted to make them feel the shame they so readily inflicted on others. The first whispers of Kai appeared subtly. A mural on the wall of their favorite exclusive restaurant, Le Fleur, depicting diners gorging themselves on caviar while a homeless man looked on, his hand outstretched. The mural was painted in shades of gray, except for the food, which was rendered in sickeningly bright, almost fluorescent colors. A projection of their corporate logo morphing into a skull during a city festival, the Bellwether Foundation logo slowly transforming into a grinning skull, complete with dollar signs in its eye sockets. Each piece was a calculated jab, a carefully placed seed of doubt in their perfect world. Their reaction was predictable: outrage, denial, attempts to suppress. They hired lawyers, pressured gallery owners, even tried to bribe city officials to remove my work. But the more they tried to silence me, the louder my voice became. The internet exploded with images of my art, fueled by the very outrage they were trying to contain. Every attempt to censor me only amplified my message, turning me into an overnight sensation. And then came the Bellwether Foundation Gala. The pinnacle of their social calendar, the event where they preened and postured, showcasing their generosity to the world. Tickets cost a fortune, the guest list was a who's who of the city's elite, and the entire affair reeked of privilege and self-importance. It was the perfect stage for my grand reveal. The ultimate art installation. I spent weeks planning. I infiltrated their security by posing as a cater waiter, bribed a disgruntled employee who hated my father for firing him without cause, and secured access to the projection system through a complex series of digital maneuvers. I created Gilded Cage, a massive digital mural that would slowly morph throughout the evening, revealing the truth behind their facade. It was a visual indictment of their greed, their hypocrisy, their empty values. A masterpiece of subversive art. As my art started gaining momentum, I could see the cracks in their perfect veneer widening. They were becoming increasingly agitated, their public smile strained, their private outbursts more frequent. I heard rumors of screaming matches, broken vases, and slammed doors echoing through the Bellwether mansion. They were struggling to maintain control, and that only fueled my determination. I watched them from the shadows, a ghost in their gilded world. I would spot them at lavish parties, their faces etched with worry, their eyes darting around as if expecting me to jump out from behind a potted plant. They stumbled through orchestrated photo ops, but they could not shake my presence. I had become a constant reminder of the daughter they had rejected, a living, breathing embodiment of their failure. They thought I was nothing, a rebellious phase that would eventually fade away. They underestimated my resolve, my talent, and my deep-seated need to expose their lies. They thought they could erase me, but I was about to rewrite their history. The gala was in full swing when I made my move. The air was thick with perfume and self-importance. The champagne flowed freely, and the chatter was a constant hum of meaningless pleasantries. The women were draped in diamonds, the men in tailored suits, each one vying for attention and approval. As Bartholomew began his self-congratulatory speech, I initiated the program. The Bellwether Foundation logo shimmered on the massive screen behind him, followed by a slideshow of smiling children. They supposedly helped through the charity. The music was soft and predictable, a nauseatingly sweet melody that was designed to tug at the heartstrings. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the logo began to distort. The children's smiles twisted into grimaces, the colors bled into each other, and the image dissolved into a swirling vortex of darkness. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The hushed whispers started, a nervous murmur that quickly spread through the crowd. Bartholomew, oblivious, continued his speech. And we are so proud to continue our commitment to. He droned on, completely unaware that their carefully constructed image was crumbling before his very eyes. That's when Gilded Cage began its true reveal. The vortex resolved into an image of a gilded bird cage, beautiful and ornate, but impossibly small. Inside, a vibrant, colorful bird beat its wings against the bars, desperate to escape. The image was captivating, impossible to ignore. People stopped talking, their attention drawn to the screen. Bartholomew faltered, his words trailing off as he finally noticed the change. His eyes widened in disbelief, his face slowly turning a shade of purple. The bird in the cage transformed. The bars melted into stacks of money, the feathers turned into newspaper headlines about corporate scandals, and the cage itself became a miniature replica of the Bellwether Mansion. It was a brutal, unflinching depiction of their world, their values, their prison. Gwendolyn gripped Bartholomew's arm, her face pale. "What is this?" she hissed, her voice barely audible above the rising murmurs. Bartholomew sputtered, "Someone sabotage. Security." He looked around frantically, his eyes darting from face to face, searching for the culprit. But it was too late. The mural continued to evolve, becoming even more explicit, more damning. Images of polluted rivers, exploited workers, and lavish parties juxtaposed with scenes of poverty and despair flooded the screen. The soundtrack shifted from the saccharine melody to a harsh industrial drone that amplified the sense of unease. And then came the final image, a portrait of me, as Kai, spray painting a mural on a dilapidated building. The mural depicted a phoenix rising from the ashes, its wings ablaze with defiance. Underneath, in bold letters, was a single word, truth. I even added a little signature flourish, a dripping paint effect under the word truth, like tears falling from a mask. I stepped out of the shadows, walking towards the stage. Every eye in the room was on me. I stopped a few feet from my parents, my gaze unwavering. I could see the shock, the anger, the fear in their eyes. I spoke into the microphone, my voice clear and strong, cutting through the chaos like a knife. "Hello, Mother. Father. Did you like my show? I'm Kai. Or as you once knew me, Sarah." The silence was deafening. Gwendolyn gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Bartholomew stared at me, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. The carefully constructed facade of wealth and power had shattered, revealing the insecure, frightened man beneath. "You," he stammered, "you did this." I smiled, a genuine, honest smile, a stark contrast to the fake smiles I had seen plastered on their faces for years. "I did. It's time the world saw the truth behind the gilded cage you've built." The aftermath was a chaotic whirlwind. The room erupted in a cacophony of gasps, whispers, and accusations. Security guards rushed towards me, but I waved them away. The damage had been done. The genie was out of the bottle. The Bellwether name became synonymous with scandal overnight. The foundation lost donors faster than you could say, tax evasion. Bartholomew was forced to resign from several boards, and Gwendolyn retreated into a self-imposed exile, hiding behind the walls of their crumbling empire. Their carefully constructed world crumbled around them like a house of cards. The police investigated me, of course. But I had covered my tracks well. I had learned a thing or two about staying one step ahead of the authorities. And the public support was overwhelming. People saw my art as a form of protest, a voice for the voiceless. They hailed me as a hero, a modern-day Robin Hood armed with a spray can. I watched it all unfold with a sense of detached satisfaction. I didn't feel joy, but I didn't feel regret. I had simply exposed the truth. My parents had built their lives on lies, and I had brought their house crashing down. My parents tried to contact me, begged to speak to me. They left tearful voicemails, sent pleading emails, even showed up unannounced at my studio, only to be turned away by my burly assistant, Rocco. I ignored their calls, their emails, their desperate attempts to reconcile. It was too late. The bond was broken. the trust shattered beyond repair. I learned later that Gwendolyn suffered a breakdown. The shame and humiliation were too much for her to bear. She was admitted to a private sanitarium, where she spent her days staring blankly out the window, lost in a world of her own making. Whether it was a well-deserved punishment or not, it made me realize that my actions had consequences, and not even I could predict them all. Bartholomew, on the other hand, never truly understood. He saw me as a traitor, a black sheep who had betrayed the family legacy. He spent his final years railing against me, blaming me for his downfall, refusing to acknowledge his own role in the tragedy. He died a few years later, bitter and resentful, still clinging to his illusions of grandeur. Years have passed since the Bellwether Gala. The name Sarah Bellwether rarely crosses my mind. Kai, however, thrives. My art continues to challenge, provoke, and inspire. I've exhibited in galleries around the world, and my work is admired by millions. My pieces have graced the covers of art magazines, hung in prestigious museums, and even been auctioned off for staggering sums. I've used my platform to champion social justice causes, to support marginalized communities, and to speak truth to power. I've become the artist I always dreamed of being, a force for change in a world that desperately needs it. I never reconciled with my parents. The breach was too deep, the wounds too raw. Trying to bridge that gap would have been like trying to swim across the Atlantic. But I came to terms with it. I realized that their love was conditional, dependent on my conformity to their expectations. And I refused to compromise my integrity for their approval. I found a different kind of family in the art world. A community of kindred spirits who embraced my authenticity and celebrated my vision. Artists, activists, and rebels who shared my passion for justice and my commitment to making a difference. I learned that true belonging comes not from bloodlines but from shared values and mutual respect. I have built a life that is rich in creativity, purpose, and connection. I have found peace in knowing that I stayed true to myself, even when it meant sacrificing everything. And that ultimately is the most important lesson I've learned. Never silence your inner voice. Never compromise your truth. Embrace your passions, even if they defy expectations. Because in the end, the only thing that truly matters is living a life that is authentic, meaningful, and true to yourself. The world needs your unique voice, your unique vision. Don't let anyone, not even your own family, dim your light. Let it shine, let it burn, let it illuminate the darkness and inspire others to find their own truth. Let it be a beacon of hope in a world that too often feels hopeless. And remember, even the most gilded cage can be broken.